Morning to you. I couldn't agree with you more. Crime is a problem for all of South Africa, and we all need to join hands and get involved. So do make sure that you do get in touch with us via Twitter. As Valen has said, we are at SABC or Morning Live SABC. Hashtag is the TNA Biz Brief. Amongst us this morning, we've got members of civil society, we've got business organizations. We also have the King as part of the stakeholders. King TB Molefe joins us here as a part of a number of people who have come together to say we need to join hands. Public-private partnerships are key. And of course, not forgetting our panelists this morning, the honored minister in the police is Nhleko. His deputy is among us as well, Makgotso Megis Sotyo. And we also have General Ria Pierre, who is the police commissioner. A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning
To
Minister, perhaps let's begin with you. I'm sure you've seen some of the headlines in the weekend newspapers, one of them reading, South Africa, a war zone. When it comes to the crime stat, is that an accurate description?
I'm not too sure about that description, really. I think it's a matter that has got to be subjected to debate. I was asking some people for an example as to what is the threshold for a war zone. In order to declare an area a war zone, how many numbers do you actually, how many numbers are you talking about, and so forth. The reality, though, is that we are faced with a particular social problem. And therefore, the response to the problem as we have it requires that we need to activate and mobilize society right across the board to begin to have a structured and a systematic approach in response to the challenges that society is faced with. And also, let me just say that to try and qualify this thing, that statistically speaking, South Africa is still on a downward trend insofar as the issue of crime is concerned. If you were to take your 10-year and a 5-year period, the only area of an increase around 6 specific areas of serious crime, it's in your 2013, 2014 in terms of an increase. But even that increase does not reverse the 5-year and the 10-year trend and so forth. So all it means is that we need to sustain efforts to push the levels of crime down.
And those are the efforts that we'll be discussing today. We want to know what is being done now that the crime stats are out. Deputy Minister, let me bring you in now. Is there any correlation or any work being done with civil society, with perhaps anthropologists, with people who do research to find out whether or not there is some sort of link between a particular society and a prevalence of crime in that area? So my question to you is, are we just treating the manifestation of the problem or the fruit of the problem and failing to get to the root? Are you working in partnerships with other departments now that the stats are out?
Thank you very much, Ayanda, for that question. I will just take you back sometime 2012, 2013, where the president established an interministerial committee on the causes of crime, and also why is crime so violent in South Africa, where we have different departments, your Department of Police, your Department of Social Development, Department of Transport, and all other sister departments, where it became obvious that without the involvement of the society at large, the communities, the NGOs, you name them all, there will never be a time that the police alone can win this battle. That is the escalating of crime. Therefore, there is a program within the police that we have embarked on, which is the community outreach program, where we are working in all provinces with all the stakeholders, those that have, even the church fraternities, they are part of us in trying and bring down the levels of crime in our country.
At the end of the day, these crime stats speak to one thing. All South Africans just want to feel safe in their homes, in their businesses, when they walk on the streets. So that should be the key or the focus when we look at crime stats. But we can't neglect the way in which we collect the crime stats. General Pierre, let me bring you into this now. Gun-free South Africa saying that the crime stats are not detailed enough, that they don't speak to perhaps the possession of weapons and where these weapons come from. And then you have Rape Crisis saying that there needs to be some distinguished figures when it comes to rape of adults and children, etc. They say that they'd like more detail as well. And then there are also calls for the figures to be released on a monthly basis as opposed to an annual basis, saying perhaps then we would see an increase in business-related crime as opposed to a decrease, especially when we look at what's been happening in Gauteng. We know that the business robberies in tech stores has gone up, and that's not reflected in these stats. So all those key areas of concern speak to one thing. Will there be some sort of revision in the way that we do collect or we go about bringing forth these crime stats?
Ayanda, thank you for that question. I think one welcomes that because it starts telling us that there is interest in society. In fact, they are demanding for more, information. They are actually suggesting, as you're saying there, that we query our report differently, more substantively around particular areas. You would know that the reporting of stats has always been there. And now you can see as this society grows, those stakeholders are starting to say, give us a little bit more. Look at this and dissect that manner, and indeed we'll embrace that and look at how we take issues forward. You mentioned issues around announcing our statistics monthly. Remember that a phenomenon such as that one requires some trend lines. You don't, pick up a trend line over a month. We do have working information internally as police to guide us in what we are doing. But when we report, we would like to have packaged information over a particular period. And Cabinet decided in 2005 that it's sufficient or it's plausible to pick up a trend line over a period of 12 months. And this is why you would note in the past 2 years, we've gone further to just not compare in-year and out-year. We have gone longitudinal to start saying, also study this trend line over the past particular years. Like this year, we're talking about a 10-5-1 formulation. The past 10 years, the current 5 years, and the in-year. You are able to pick up trends to say, is this, crime going down, going up? What are the issues? Where it's having deep troughs and peaks? What are the issues? Social phenomenon are always done like that. So we take the issue for additional information, but the issue of reporting, remember, we want to also establish trends as police and as a society, and also to study, the drivers for those trends.
Does it not become too reactionary then, perhaps, by the time the incidents have occurred, or the gravity, the magnitude of the particular crime, by the time the stats come out? Is it not too late then for police to actually do something to nip it in the bud as opposed to reacting as soon as they find out?
No, not quite, because remember, we have management information. In the stations, there are actually, for you to know that we have 10 robberies. They've been collected this Monday, that Monday, that Monday. So when they sit at the station, Crime Combating Forum, they look at what has come up. They go back to their records and everything. So working information is always there for the stations, for the clusters, for us as police. But when you release statistics, you do much, much more. And that's where the trend lines come in.
Minister, let's perhaps bring you in here. I know you'd like to speak to that as well. I also want to find out from you when it comes to the increase of murder. So do you want to answer that first before we take a look at the stats themselves?
No, can I just make some few additional points on this question? That firstly, I think it's important to understand as to why we release the crime stats. The first part is more to do with inculcation as well as cultivation of a democratic culture in South Africa, as well as a sense of accountability and transparency. So I think that's important to understand that particular element. The second one, I think as the Commissioner had said that, in fact, essentially trends are determined by time. So what that essentially means is that you require time to monitor, first and foremost, the development of a particular trend, but also monitor progress that you as an institution are making in response to a particular developing kind of trend and so forth. and look at how you then plan around targeted interventions. I think the last point is that we should also not forget that the reporting cycle of government, we produce annual reports, so we report once a year in terms of a reporting cycle, not only on crime stats. So crime stats are part of the performance information for the South African Police Service. And therefore, it should also be seen along those particular lines and so on. But with regards to the specific areas that also have been raised on, shouldn't we also be looking at further, in terms of further dissection of the nature of a particular problem and so forth, in terms of further categories and so forth, I think it's a matter to be welcomed for a further debate and engagement around that specific area.
We'll engage in some further debate and some dissection of issues in just a moment. Let's take a quick ad break. When we come back, we speak about the reliability of those stats. Many saying when it comes to sexual offences that they're unreliable because many of those crimes go unreported. We'll also take a look at the increase in the murder rate, 800 more in the 2013-2014 financial year. Cause for concern. All that and more in just a moment. Stay with us.